Hello, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all of the places you can find me should be linked in the description box below this video. I'm doing a book chat today, so if that's not of interest to you, I completely understand. I'll be back with some more making videos soon, but for those of you who are readers and are interested in books, then I hope you will stick around. At the end of last year, I did a small series of videos, I think only one or two in the end, chatting about the things that I have been reading in that month, and then time got away with me, and towards the very end of last year, I wasn't able to keep up with that little series of videos. So I thought, New Year 2021, I'd try and resurrect it, and hoping to do a monthly video about some of the books that I've been reading in the preceding months and some of the things that I'm looking forward to in the coming month. But for this first video, to kick things off, I thought I'd chat about some of my favourite reads in 2020 and some of the things that I'm looking forward to in 2021. I feel like I'm a little bit more awkward when I make these bookish videos because I'm not as used to talking about books as I am about knitting, spinning, crochet. I can chat about those till the cows come home. So these videos won't necessarily be reviews as such, just yeah, a bit of a chat about what I've been reading and some of my impressions, I guess. But hopefully as time goes on, I'll get a little bit more used to chatting about books. So yeah, bear with me if I'm a little bit awkward. Before I get stuck into telling you about my favourite books of 2020, I just wanted to say a big thank you to anyone who left book recommendations for me on my last few bookish videos. I asked for general book audiobook recommendations. In the last video that I did, I asked for some recommendations specifically about books set in your area to enable me to travel to places virtually while we're not able to travel in reality. I've kept a list of those books on my phone. While the shops were open, I was keeping an eye out in some of my local secondhand shops for anything that I could get my hands on. I've also been trawling my local library, or the app that I use for the local library, to try and sort of add to my reading list as many of those books as possible. Some of them are proving slightly harder to find, in which case I may end up purchasing some books down the line. But yeah, I just want to say a big thanks for those recommendations, and I've been really enjoying some of the books that you recommended. Okay, so I have picked out a couple of non-fiction books and 5 of my favourite books of 2020, along with a couple of honourable mentions that didn't quite make it into my top 5. So let's chat non-fiction first, because that's going to be fairly quick. I read a fair amount of non-fiction last year, but I've got 2 books that I particularly enjoyed. The first one I don't have a actual copy of, and that was Rewilding by Elizabeth Tree. So I'll pop a picture of the cover of that book up on the screen now. Basically, it was a book about the transformation of a sort of country estate, I guess, here in England. It sort of details the project of moving this land from sort of traditional farming land back to more sort of conservation land with smaller scale farming, and allowing sort of animals to help them conserve and maintain the land rather than farming the land. And it was just a really interesting listen. I really enjoyed it. I love kind of learning about nature, natural history. So if that's something that you're interested in too, I can definitely recommend. One was recommended to me by both Leslie and Mairead here on the channel, so thank you for that recommendation. Second one, I read this a couple of times in 2020, and it's called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo-Lodge. Last year, of course, there was a huge conversation about race, racism, Black Lives Matter, that whole movement, and I read quite a few books trying to teach myself, to educate myself, to learn. But this one in particular struck a chord with me because it's particularly about race in Britain. Some of the other books that I read were more sort of American centric, but this is British based, and it says on the back, this is the book that sparked a national conversation exploring everything from eradicated Black history to the inextricable link between class and race. Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race is the essential handbook for anyone who wants to understand race relations in Britain today. So yeah, can thoroughly recommend this. I learned a lot from reading it, and it's one that I'm definitely going to continue to go back to. In terms of my fiction favourites, I'm just going to quickly mention two that didn't quite make it into the top 5. The first is by Tony Adeyemi, Children of Blood and Bone, which is a young adult fantasy series. This is the first in what I think is going to be a trilogy. I read the second book as well, although I didn't enjoy the second book quite as much as I enjoyed this first book. I have very distinct memories of reading this back during our first lockdown. It was a rather sunny day. I was sat in the back garden and I was just snotty crying at this at the end. So yes, Children of Blood and Bone, Children of Blood and Bone by Tony Adeyemi. A really strong sort of young adult fantasy book set in the kingdom of Orisha, where magic has been basically stripped from magic users, but now our main character Zaylee has a chance to bring back magic and push back against the monarchy. Yes, if you like fantasy and if you don't mind dipping your toe into young adult, I can highly recommend Children of Blood and Bone. I don't always enjoy all of the tropes in young adult novels. I'm not the target audience for those anymore. I'm much older these days. I still enjoy reading quite a lot of them. And yeah, Children of Blood and Bone was just a standout for me this year. The next one, not quite in my top 5, is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a book that's written in verse, so it's a fairly quick read. It's about two sisters or half-sisters who are unaware of each other's existence until their father dies in a plane crash. That's not a spoiler, that's on the blurb on the back. And I listened to the audiobook of this, and one of the characters is read by Elizabeth Acevedo herself, and yeah, it was just thoroughly enjoyable. I haven't read many books in verse or much poetry, but yeah, this one, I just really enjoyed this one, and I hope to read more from this author this year. On to my top 5 in no particular order, although the book that I will mention last is definitely my favourite of the year. So yeah, number 1 spot is claimed, the rest are interchangeable. So the first one, if you watched any of my previous bookish videos, probably won't be of any surprise to you. It's Cersei by Madeline Miller. Look at that stunning cover. And I asked James to gift me a hard copy of this book after I read it, because I know it's one that I'm going to come back to again and again. It's obviously centres around the character of Cersei from Greek mythology, and I studied classics at university, so it's nice to go back to fictional stories set in mythological worlds, because yeah, it reminds me of my youth and my studies. But I have a fondness for mythology from all sorts of cultures, so yeah, really enjoyed Cersei, just love the character, love the storytelling. And I do have Madeline Miller's other book, The Song of Achilles, in my Audible library waiting to be listened to, so I shall definitely get to that one at some point in 2021. Next on the list, I've got a couple of young adult books. The first one is actually a twofer. I read Nevermore and Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend. These are the Morrigan Crow books, and this series was introduced to me by my lovely friend Sally. And these are middle grade books actually, rather than young adult, so a slightly younger audience, but it's set in this amazing imaginative world of Nevermore. And as an adult, I just really love this book, love this world, love the characters, and I think anyone of any age could get on board with this if you like kind of magical fantasy worlds. I preferred Wondersmith slightly to Nevermore, but basically Morrigan Crow is a cursed child, so she was born on a particular day and she is fated to die on a particular day, and on that day a wonderful character called Jupiter North comes and rescues her and takes her away to Nevermore, where she undergoes some trials to become a member of the Wondrous Society. So this is the second book in that series, and the third book, spoilers, will be coming up on my things I'm looking forward to reading in 2021 list. So yeah, if you fancy something that's very imaginative, quite light-hearted, just a wonderfully well thought out world, yeah, I can highly recommend the Morrigan Crow books by Jessica Townsend. Next is a young adult book by Terry Pratchett set in his Discworld, and it's the We Free Men. This is the first in the Tiffany Aching series. I think there are 5 or 6 books in this sort of smaller series set in the larger Discworld, and James recommended these to me and has been on at me to read these for a little while, and I think we're now on the second to last. We're listening to them together now, but we're on the second to last book in this sort of mini series. But my favourite has been The We Free Men. This book just had me laughing and crying, and yeah, I just loved it. I think I felt a particular connection to this book because it's set in a part of the Discworld called the Chalk, and I lived in the county of Wiltshire here in the UK for many, many years. Sir Terry Pratchett lived in Wiltshire too. So it's talking about the Chalk Downlands, and there are many things in that I recognise from where I used to live. Tiffany, our main character in this book, has recently lost her gran. Granny Aching was a shepherdess extraordinaire. So yeah, if you're usually here for the fibre content, we're gonna always love a story which is connected to sheep, aren't we? So yeah, special place in my heart, in particular for the We Free Men. This is definitely one that I will go back to and read again and again. The next one is The Binding by Bridget Collins. I picked this up secondhand for like 99p in one of our charity shops, and I put it on a post on Instagram along with some of the other books that I pulled in that shopping trip, and loads of people messaged me about this book, said you've got to read it, you've got to read it. For some reason I put it off for a couple of months, didn't read it, and then when I picked it up, I absolutely loved this book. Just the storytelling and the love story in this book is just absolutely amazing. But even aside from that, it has one of my favourite kind of themes to explore. One of my favourite ever movies is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So if you know that movie, it's kind of exploring the possibilities of what would happen to us, what would we do if we had the ability to block or take away memories that were painful to us or that we didn't want anymore. And this has broadly a similar theme. And yeah, I just love that idea and the exploration of that and the consequences of that should it be possible. So let me just read you the blurb on the back. Emmett Farmer is a binder's apprentice. His job is to handcraft beautiful books, and within each to capture something unique and extraordinary, a memory. If you have something you want to forget or a secret to hide, he can bind it and you will never have to remember the pain it caused. In a vault under his mentor's workshop, row upon row of books and secrets are meticulously stored and recorded. Then one day, Emmett makes an astonishing discovery. One of the volumes has his name on it. Gives me the shivers. Just reading that blurb. And yeah, don't want to say anything too much and spoil it in case you haven't read it, but loved it. But my favourite book of the year, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and I'll pop a picture of it. I don't have a physical copy yet. I've ordered one, but I've ordered a hard copy and it's on back order. So yeah, if you can, do yourself a favour and read this book. I do not have high enough praise for this book. I absolutely loved it. It's a really hopeful, wholesome story, the perfect antidote to 2020. I read it in December, or I listened to the audiobook, and I've basically had the audiobook on repeat ever since. So it's become my bedtime reading. So I tend to pop an audiobook on, set the sleep timer and fall asleep to someone reading to me every night. And every night my first choice is The House in the Cerulean Sea. So it's about our main character. It's called Linus, and he works for the department in charge of magical children. Basically, it's set in a world where people have powers and abilities. He's sent to an orphanage on this remote island, which is home to several children who are considered to be particularly dangerous because of their powers and abilities. It's a story of hope. There's a lovely romance in it. Characters are wonderful. There's not tons and tons of plot. It is, you know, there's not lots and lots of things happening, but it's an exploration of how we try to fit in if we're different, about prejudice, tolerance, finding a place in which we're able to be entirely ourselves. It's just lovely. Read it. Before I cry at the thought of the house in the Cerulean Sea, I'm going to chat briefly about some of the books that I'm really looking forward to reading in 2021. So I've pulled out a little stack from my bookshelf of things that I shall be hopefully reading in the next couple of months. The first is Holopox, which is the newest instalment in the Nevermore series. This is the third book, and I believe that the author has signed a deal for at least 3 more, so we shall have more in the world of Nevermore soon. But I purchased this when it came out at the end of last year, but I have been trying not to dive into it too quickly because it might be a year or 2 before we get the next instalment. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that one. I want to try and read a few more classics this year. James got me this copy of Jane Eyre for Christmas by Charlotte Bronte. I'm hoping to read through all of the novels of the Bronte sisters. I'm going to start with Jane Eyre. I do know the story of Jane Eyre. I've watched several of the film, TV adaptations, but never read the book. After I read the binding, I discovered that Bridget Collins, the author of that book, had just recently released a second book, The Betrayals. So I was in my local bookstore and enjoyed the binding so much I just had to grab this. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this one. Yeah, I don't know too much about this book, but I'm hoping that I will enjoy it half as much as I enjoyed the binding. Next is one I've had on my shelf for quite a few months. I actually purchased this for myself as a birthday treat back in August. I've heard nothing but good things about this book. Again, it's a young adult fantasy book called Raybearer by Jordan Ifweko. Isn't that cover just absolutely stunning? And our main character is called Cersei. She was raised in isolation by a mysterious and often absent mother known only as the Lady. And then she gets sent to compete to join the Crown Prince's Council of 11. Cersei wants just to find bonds and a family, the things that she hasn't had. But the Lady has other ideas, including a magical wish that Cersei is compelled to obey, kill the Crown Prince once she gains his trust. So yeah, looking forward to finally tucking into this one at some point soon. The next book that I have to show you is called The Invisible Life of Andy Larue by V.E. Schwab, and this is one that I'm really excited about. It's another sort of play around with memory, loss and remembrance. Basically, our main character, Addy, strikes a deal with a kind of mysterious devil, I guess. A desperate woman makes a desperate deal in the dark, a bargain to live forever but never be remembered. So basically she goes through hundreds and hundreds of years of no one remembering who she is. As soon as they meet her, they've forgotten her. No one remembers her name. And I think it's quite a slow burn story looking at that aspect of her life. But one day she wanders into a bookshop and meets someone called Henry who remembers who she is. So yeah, I've heard lots of good things about this. I've heard some people not so keen on it because apparently it is quite a slow read, but it just sounds enchanting to me, and I can't wait to be able to find the time to get stuck into this one. I think that's it for my bookish video today. Let me know in the comments below whether you have some favourites that you read in 2020 or whether you have anything coming up in 2021 that you're particularly excited for. I'm always happy to receive book recommendations. I'm going to try and make this a monthly video again, I think. I might just come back every month for a few minutes to chat about perhaps my favourite reads of the month or anything that I might be looking forward to, and hopefully as we go along I'll become a little bit less awkward. talking about books. If you stuck around for my waffle, then I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm going to sign off for now, but until we get to spend time together again, I hope you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. Great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.